is Tom Paul Tipton. Welcome back to another episode of the Exchange Podcast. I want to take a minute to say thank you to those who support this podcast with your contributions, as well as Living Water Church, where our studios are currently hosted in Conway, Arkansas. Also, I would like you to invite you to like and share this on Facebook and get the word out. Also, send in any questions you have and join in on the exchange. Not only are we on Facebook, but we are also on YouTube. We are working on some other mediums, and hopefully that will all start coming together very soon in the near future. And when it does, we will let you know. I just kind of want to take a moment to share some bad news that I woke up to this morning. It is apparent that Taylor Hawkins of the Foo Fighters has passed away, and that is very sad, especially if you liked their music. And there's a lot of different, a lot of different rumor mills going on, I'm sure, but there has not been any cause of death that has been shared. And the band, Foo Fighters, as far as the entity of the Foo Fighters, they have asked that everyone respect their privacy, and I would just say that my prayers go out to them, and somehow God is able to speak into that situation. I don't know any of them, and I don't know anyone who does, but I would still pray for them, and I will pass it off to JaVaughn.
Yeah, hey, how's it going, everybody? My name's JaVaughn Iversen with the Exchange Podcast. I'm happy to be here. I'm pushing buttons over here, having a great time. It is sad to hear that someone has passed. I didn't know the Foo Fighters as well as most of my buddies did, especially one of my roommates back in college. He was a huge Foo Fighters fan, and it's just sad to hear that anybody's going to pass away at any time. But, man, I looked it up. He was 50 years old. 50 years old, very, I'm only 8 years away from that. And back in 2019, right before the whole, in fact, I think it was in October of that year, they came through Nashville, and I went and seen them at that show. And was it good?
Just phenomenal show. And I remember, he was a big Queen fan, and I know everybody's going, "Why are you talking about this on a Christian podcast?" I don't.
You can't deny talent.
You can't deny talent, and I don't promote secular music per se. But at the end of the day, like you said, you can't deny talent, and there was some incredible talent amongst all 5 or 6 of those guys that's in that band. I think it's a 6-man band, and of course, everybody knows about David Jerold and his history with Nirvana, and there's always just a ton of speculation, and it's just never good. Speculation isn't good. It doesn't lead you anywhere. I mean, we're still to this day arguing over what was the cause of death of
Kurt Cobain.
Yeah,
I think when people ask, "Hey, can we have our privacy?" I think that extends to the speculation side. And we're not going to do that here. We are,
we don't do that here.
We don't. We're in a time of, hey, we celebrate life here, and as believers, we can also celebrate death for those fellow believers. It's just at this point, I'm not going to speculate any way, shape, or form. I'm just going to pray for those who've lost a friend, a brother, a son. So keep them in your prayers. But to segue back into what we have at the podcast here, I'm very happy. There has been a cultural shift in advertisement for a bunch of different people. If you haven't heard Harry's Razors, this isn't a sponsorship for them, but they have their own company, and they do their thing. They get to make whatever rules they want to. But what they did was they created their own competitor. And I was talking to Thomas about this earlier. But and this is important to know for culturally, because a lot of people think that there's only one thing that they can get. For the longest time, it was just Harry's Razors. They're a great company. I hear they have great razors, good quality. But when you make a mistake of talking to one of your partners who advertises for you, in this case, the Daily Wire, and you blatantly go out and you denounce them and you call them out on their shtick or whatever they're doing that you don't like, well, then you end up with Jeremy's Razors, which is a company owned by, and again, not a sponsor, just some news. They're owned by the Daily Wire, and within the first 3 days, they have 25,000 subscriptions.
Wow.
So, I mean, things are just, you don't think that's a big number sometimes, like 25,000 compared to 300 million people in the United States. But let's say the subscription is $5 each.
Just starting off. That's
just starting off for 25,000, a month, 25,000 subscribers a month. That is, when you put it into the calculator, that's $125,000 a month,
right?
Just for razors. So that's huge.
Well, and I don't know what you think of this, or if you've really kept up with it that much. But there's a lot of people who's calling for what we would call a parallel economy. You know what that? I mean, have you kept up with any of that?
I'm not an economist, but I kind of get the idea of the words used, the parallel. So
you're hearing. I mean, it's starting to come. It's starting to come around. I mean, a lot of people and for advertisement's sake, and copyright and all that, or trademark and all that. I don't want to get into too much of it, but you're getting different things. Okay, for instance, like Hillsdale College that you're hearing a lot about. It's an option to go to that will actually teach people what we've been talking about a lot, and that is the true founding of this country. Then there's other things like Patriot Mobile and different things like that. If you listen to any kind of talk radio, they're always talking about that stuff. And so basically what it is, Patriot Mobile is just a way of giving people another option to get away from like Verizon and AT&T.
The really big companies that just kind of crumble under somebody who has 2 subscribers and says they don't like something. By the way, that's I'm making a joke, but it's not a joke. That's how that happened with Harry's Razors. Teenager with 2 followers on Twitter complained about the Daily Wire to Harry's. Harry's pulled out their advertisements, said, the Daily Wire bad. And Daily Wire said, okay, fine, do that. We will create our own company and we will do our own thing and give other people the option, because what you're telling the Daily Wire, not only are you telling the Daily Wire that you don't like them and you don't want them to subscribe to your products, you're telling their, I don't know if you know this, but, their small audience, the Daily Wire, because they have a tiny audience.
Yeah.
But you tell the audience, hey, no, we don't want you buying our stuff. And it's just like I mentioned this a few weeks back, but G4 TV, a video game company that reviews video games, they went out and said, hey, listen, if you voted for Trump, we don't want you guys. And they lost so many subscribers. I mean, it's totally screwed their whole business model over, because listen, even if you agree with Joe Biden, even if you agree with the left or anything like that, I want you to listen to this podcast. I want you to talk to us. I want you are welcome here. And those of you who supported Trump, you're definitely welcome here. Everybody's definitely welcome here at the Exchange Podcast. And nobody should ever be told, we don't want your service here, because guess what? It didn't really work out when they boycotted the bus system.
Right.
What makes you think when a whole group of people with like-minded individuals say, we're not going to use your product? I mean, come on.
Well, I wouldn't, I'm not going to call it, I wouldn't call for a boycott. And we've checked it, and I'm not saying this in a braggadocious manner, but we've got listeners in all 50 states.
Yeah, it's going good.
I wouldn't call for a boycott. I would say, look, if you like Harry's razors, go continue using Harry's razors. However, what Harry has just discovered for themselves is that how the opposite edge of capitalism works. Yeah. And like you said, they've created for themselves their competition, and that's how capitalism is supposed to work.
Yeah.
And I've always like Harry's razors, and for me, if I was to quit using them, it has nothing to do with them pulling their ads from the Daily Wire. It has to do with that they allowed this teenage kid to bully them.
Yeah, you can't give the kids too much power.
Well, I mean, think about it. I mean, you've got this guy who had zero voice, and I understand that they wanted to do it because they wanted to, let's not create negative advertisement for us. But now every kid who, whether they're offended or not, is now emboldened to say, oh, you said something that I disagree with, so now I'm going to call you out on social media and try to put you out of business. I think what Harry's would have found out if they'd have stayed with the Daily Wire, I think what they would have discovered is that their sales would have tripled, doubled. I mean, just,
if they would have just doubled down, if they would have just said, hey, listen, this is a free market economy, meaning if If a very conservative group wants to advertise for us, okay. And, if some other group, if another group wants to advertise for us, that's great. Now, here's the thing. If it's a company with no moral values and they're totally 100% into the capitalistic mindset of, I don't see black or white, I only see green.
Yeah.
Listen, they're going to make the most money.
That's right.
All the time.
That's
Every
right.
single time. And here's the thing. Those companies are the ones who keep themselves quiet. Now, a good example is Chick-fil-A. Everybody says, "Oh, well, they don't like people from the LGBT community." And if you go to Maumelle, if you go to a very conservative town like Maumelle, or if you go to Little Rock, or if you go to all these places around here, go to Chick-fil-A, and obviously don't go outing people if they don't want people to know that their sexuality, obviously.
Right.
But I've met quite a few managers who have worked for a short time at a specific Chick-fil-A because they were just kind of passing through, getting training and whatnot.
Yeah.
And you come to find out they're part of the LGBT community because Chick-fil-A kept quiet when everybody was saying, "Oh, you guys hate gays." Well, no, we don't. And that's all we're going to say. We're going to leave it at that because they know in their hearts they're doing fine.
Well,
no need to. Well, I guess what I'm saying is don't fight a crocodile in the water.
Yeah.
That's where they want you. They want you to get on their level.
Yeah.
They want you to say, "Well, you hate this," and it's like, "No, I don't hate this," and they want you to try to fight with them, but they have the upper hand. That's the thing, is that when people fight dirty, they always have the upper hand. And if you're not willing to fight dirty, which I don't suggest you do, because then you are just as bad as them, and you try to fight them on your moral standings, you will always lose. That's why you should just stay away from the fight.
I don't know. Okay. From a Christian stand, we return good for evil. And so there's no way, I'm always going to take the Christian viewpoint on it. However, I'm not so sure that sometimes we're not better off. I don't want to say that, returning, tit for tat, as they say. But I think sometimes, one of the things that they always got upset with Donald Trump was, and I think, Donald Trump's mouth got him into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And I'll go ahead and say that here. But I think sometimes that, the way he would handle things was able to get more stuff done because they realized they couldn't rattle him. And I'll give you another example, since we are talking from a Christian standpoint. It's John MacArthur. They tried, during the lockdown, man, he shut his church down, and he runs like several thousand. He shut his church down, for a while, but then he opened it back up. And the state of California, Governor Newsom, man, slapped him with some heavy lawsuits. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, I believe, is the one. I don't even think it went to the Supreme Court. Maybe it did. But the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals come out and ruled in his favor. And then because I believe later that it did go to the Supreme Court, and then they kicked it back and said this is a state issue. And what John MacArthur did is he just simply stood up and said, "Hey, you're telling us to shut down. We're not going to shut down." And so they kept opening the church. And what he showed is that if we would just kind of stand up for ourselves sometimes, we actually have more influence and power and authority than what we think we do.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example of someone who's not in the church. And that's, what is it, J.K. Rowling, the woman who wrote Harry Potter?
Yes.
Man, she has went to the mat over the transgender thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She has been a stalwart about that. She's not backed down. And I think in some cases that has probably helped her profit margin. And I don't think that's why she's doing it. I just think that what's happening is people that normally would not have bought her products, her books, whatever, are now doing it simply because they're going, this is the kind of person we need right now.
Well, the thing about that is she knew it could potentially hurt her money.
Yeah.
But she stood by it.
Right.
Now the thing, because I don't know if you know this, but behind the Bible, it's Harry Potter.
No.
Like in sales, like the most sold book around the world is the Bible.
No. Well, absolutely. Yeah.
And then right behind it, and not that far off is Harry Potter, the whole Harry Potter series.
Yeah.
And so people need to understand that when you stand up to, and I'm going to use the woke ideology, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
When you stand up against that, you're getting ready to be persecuted. Now, I'm not talking like, oh, woe is me, people are saying mean things. But, if you have a business, get ready for that business probably to be taken down. Get ready for that business to be smeared.
Yeah.
How you make money might be destroyed because you stood up and you said, I don't agree with this. And that's going to hurt you 90% of the time.
Yeah.
That 10% of the time is that you have the money to weather the storm. But here's the thing. It's hard to tell who can weather the storm because Kyrie Irving stood up to the mandates on getting the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
He stood by his religious convictions.
Yeah.
And now, we may disagree on some things, but he stood up and he said, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
I'm not going to get this done. And they wouldn't let him play. And a lot of people kept on saying, come on, man, play. Come on, play, man. It's really not that big of a
He
deal.
stood for his principles.
And he's like, no, I'm going to stand for my... And that's somebody I would tell, I may disagree with him on a lot of things, but I would sit down and have a cup of coffee with him and say, hey, listen, I appreciate you standing up for your convictions.
Mm-hmm.
We disagree on a lot of things. And, I would say, hey, good job. I don't know too much about basketball, but I would say he's a decent player.
Yeah.
He's very popular, and I want to make it a point that when you stand up to these people, you might lose something. But let me tell you something. There is a huge reward for those of us who are believers.
Yes.
When you stand up for your convictions and you hold firm, and we talk about this crown that'll be given to us in heaven by Christ,
Right.
and God, and it'll be noticed, and then we'll give that crown back. But I mean, listen, if your goal isn't to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant, and receive that ultimate gift at the end, then you're not going to want to hear this part. But the point is that when you stand up for your convictions, and especially say, listen, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. You are doing a good service for people to realize if they can do it, I can do it too. And I am thankful that J.K. Rowling stands for her convictions, because a lot of Christians, and I was hearing this, a lot of Christians make up God how they want to see God, and
Right.
they make him abstract. But the reality is that God's influence is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so he might just be, and again, he might not, it's whatever, however you believe this part, but he might be using J.K. Rowling to stand up for these convictions. But don't just let J.K. Rowling be the reason that you stand for your convictions.
No, I mentioned them because we need people who are that influential to stand up. I mean, that's like, there's been different, the lead singer of The Who and different musicians that have come out. I mean, Eric Clapton was one, different ones that are, major guys in that industry. And then obviously in this industry, you had Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Who were simply saying, man, look, one of the things about liberty, one of the things about freedom is that you take risks that may scare other people.
Yep.
But you don't, if you want to take the vaccine, go take the vaccine. But you can't take it. And I'm convinced that over the last 2 years, what we've had is a lot of, and I'm not saying this in a way to slander or cut anyone down, but a lot of people that are germaphobes has been running the country. And I heard something the other day, yesterday, Howard Stern of all people, who in radio, there's only two people that have had the influence that those two have, and that's been Rush Limbaugh and Howard Stern. And Howard Stern was a guy who was always, he's always been this person. Say what you believe, live the way you feel. But he's like coming unglued over the mask mandates.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm saying. So you've got to have people who are willing to stand up and go, hey, we're not going to concede and shrink back in fear.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having those people. My encouragement is be the change that you want to be, because those words, they're from Gandhi, and we come from different religious backgrounds, but it's true. It is that it does coincide with the golden rule. Treat others how you want to be treated, and how I want to be treated is A, left alone, but B, I want everybody to make their decision. I don't yell at people who get the boosters.
Right.
We may not have dinner together and we may not be friends ever, but that doesn't mean I'm going to look at you and point at you and say, how dare you make a decision for yourself? I'm just saying, okay, well, hey, good for you. Because I think that's the other fallacy out there is, why can't we all just get along type thing? We can get along from a distance. I don't have to be friends with everybody. I don't have to look at everybody and say, oh, we're just going to be hunky-dory and have a great time. That's, when it comes to my beliefs as a Christian, I believe, I'm going to have a hand open for you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be there for you if you ask for it. But I can't just, you can in a way, but I can't just be in everybody's business and tell them what to do. They're never going to listen to me. Humans were meant to.
Well, and on the same token, we don't want people putting their hands in our business.
Yeah.
And telling us what to do and how to live.
Yeah. And so you look at, for instance, a lot of people are going to, I can see people saying, well, wait a minute, this contradicts everything about Christ. And I would say, no, it wasn't. He wasn't in that lady's business when she was on all fours crawling to him just to touch his robe.
Right.
He was just out and about, and the crowd wanted to be around him. You want people to hear what you have to say without you wanting to be in their business. I mean, that's one of the reasons I wanted to do podcasting, is because I know people are going to want to hear what I have to say, only because, not because of who I am, but because I know that I can have a conversation with just about anybody. Yeah. And the reason people want to listen to me is because I want to listen to them. Yeah. And so that's
and it's the same thing. Same thing for me. I mean, I got into podcasting because I wanted to give a alternate opinion, and the problem is with some of the platforms, I mean, you've seen the fight and the threats we've had about they're going to take us down and everything else. Of course, most of those are just people that are scamming and trying to get money. But but what I'm saying is, you'll get people that will report you. People that are saying negative things, and they've not even listened to 5 minutes of this podcast, let alone the full hour. And so that's really what we're finding here, man, is we're finding people that either they're interested, genuinely interested in what we're saying. They may disagree. Then you've got the people that are completely shut off. Yep. And, in the Bible, it says, come and let us reason together. It's in Isaiah. It says, come and let us reason together. And that's what we're supposed to do. That's not an American idea. And I know many people, when you say this, are, well, you're just quoting an idea that's from, United States free thinking. It's a oppressive country. No, this is from the scripture. And he says, come, God is speaking there, and he's saying, come, let us reason together, because the point being is that we're, as humans, we're not right about everything. No. And we should have the ability to make up our mind. Hey, I don't agree with what this, I thought this was one thing, but I have discovered now it's not. But we do that on our own. And we don't, I don't want to, because the way I am, if I feel like somebody is trying to force me into a certain direction, I'm going to go the other direction. Right. Because I'm going, you're just now trying to make my mind up for me. You're trying to now create what I should think, what I should believe. And that is where I go, okay, I have my faith, I have the scriptures, I have my church, and that's how I formulate my opinions, is based upon what the scriptures say. And if the scriptures tell me that something's wrong, you can say I'm closed-minded. But the difference is I'm not trying to enforce my belief over on you, and I'm not trying to shut you down because you disagree with what I think.
Exactly. The thing that comes to mind is just, you watch a child from the age of like 0 to 5, and they start to realize that they have functionality, whether it's just moving their arm or just full-blown walking around.
Mm-hmm.
And, you tell a child, don't do this.
Yeah.
They're going to do it.
Right.
For instance, my dad has a story about me, and he tells, I don't know how many times he's told this story, but I've heard it so many times, that JaVaughn was messing around with one of the power outlets, and I told him, don't touch that.
Yeah.
And JaVaughn would look at me, my father, and go to touch the outlet while he was looking at me as if I wasn't going to do anything. And then, I got, smacked on the wrist and told, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm crying. And I learned, okay, I can't do that thing. But that's the thing, is that humans are inherently going to do whatever they want. And I think the weird contradicting part about humans as well is that if you get us in a very comfortable spot, we'll do whatever you say.
Right.
That's the weird thing. If you make us uncomfortable, we'll do what we want. But I think the enemy, and again, for those of you believers, you know who I'm talking about, Satan, the devil, all that. I think the enemy's gotten really good at realizing I can make these people comfortable. And if I make them comfortable, they'll listen to me.
Yeah.
And to be honest, what we should be is we should be uncomfortable with the comfort that we have in this world, the instant gratification.
Yes.
Now, don't get me wrong. I I agree. I love myself some. I love a McChicken here and there,
right.
from McDonald's, and it's unhealthy for you. You shouldn't be eating that. But I will say, once you get into a comfortable position, you get anybody into a comfortable position,
right?
They're never going to want to get out. So therefore, they will do whatever it takes to keep that comfort there.
That's right.
So you got to be careful with that too. And I'm just speaking to all my listeners, not just the Christians out there, just everybody out there. Just be careful about how comfortable you get, because you get fat and lazy, and that's not a good thing. What I will say is that we've been talking about free thinking, and we've been talking about that. That's just kind of our shtick for this whole Exchange podcast, is the free thinking and whatnot. But you brought up a bill this last week that's happening in Georgia, which for those of you who are listening in Georgia, for any of you out there just listening, there's a bill that hasn't been passed yet. It's HB 1013, and that's in Georgia. And it's a little concerning. Just to give the general synopsis of it, they're going to be messing with the wording and the what is mental illness and how that could be a problem. I'll let Thomas studied it more than I did. I just didn't understand the legal jargon. I'm not that smart.
So, yeah, it's HB 1013. That's the bill. And I would tell anybody in Georgia that's listening to us, but call your representative and tell them not to vote for this. Because the thing is, 9 times out of 10, when something's passed in one state, it's not long until other states start trying to implement it.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing about this bill is, I think if you remember, that was about 3, 4, 5 podcasts ago we were talking, and I made the mention. I said there's been something concerning about all the mental health stuff. I'm sure you've got friends, I know I do, that put their mental health issues on social media.
Yeah.
And so what a lot of times, if we're not careful, what's going on, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist here. I've just got history as my go-to to say it can and it has happened. And so a lot of times when they start putting this thing out here saying, hey, if you're dealing with this or you're dealing with that, then be careful, because what are they trying to get you to do? And in this bill, the biggest concerning thing for me, and it's about, if you go to the website, you can find it, and that's what it's called. It's called HB 1013, and it's like line 27, 28.
Well, you have it here.
I have it here, and so it's like line 27 to 28, and what it talks about, it says it's to authorize a peace officer to take custody of a person in apparent mental health crisis and transport the person to an evaluation facility, notwithstanding the absence of evidence that the person has committed a criminal offense. Now, that's the reason that is so concerning, is because essentially they don't have to have evidence. They just have to say, hey, we think you have a mental illness. And you know what all, you know how they define, like studied how they define mental illness?
No.
There's a lot of different things can be a mental illness, and what people have done. I mean, after a while, when everything's a mental illness, then nothing is a mental illness.
Well, there's that, and then some small things could be mental illness. For instance, I've been diagnosed with ADHD. So I mean, what's stopping them from saying, "Oh, you have mental illness?" And it's like, okay, well, what do you think? Well, we heard you have ADHD. Okay, and
yeah,
and then they could just kind of say, well, we believe you have something else that adds on to it. Which a lot of times when you have ADHD, you have something else that may have gone undiagnosed for a long time. Or you even mentioned something as simple as sleep apnea. I mean,
because I mean, that in within itself is a neurological issue.
Yeah.
And so that can be considered a mental illness. I mean, PTSD, obviously, but there's even one PTS that's just PTS. And what that means, if you've had some kind of situation that's happened to you, okay, and there's been some kind of trauma that has been connected to it,
mm-hmm.
you'll have PTS. And what it is PTS is the only really connection to that has to PTSD, or the only difference between it, rather. Sorry. PTSD is like a prolonged post-traumatic stress. Then there's just post-traumatic stress. And I had that situation with me. I had a situation that occurred with me, and I'm not going to go into the whole gist of it, and I kind of want to be careful what I talk about, because I don't want people thinking that I had any kind of issues with the police. I didn't. But I had a situation where one afternoon on a random Thursday in the month of October, I get a knock on the door. And it's a police officer from the town that I live in.
Yeah, and those aren't like gentle knocks.
No, and it's like, okay, what's the problem here? Of course, there was a big drama that went on after this for probably 3 or 4 months. The drama didn't cause the PTS. What did cause the PTS is for, I bet, for probably 2 months after that, 3 months, 4 months after that, no longer than that. Probably about almost a year. If I had a random knock at my door, it would, like, my heart would just want to go.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'd have to settle down and go, I mean, knocks come on people's door every day.
Oh, well, just to give you an idea, especially like a knock like that or anything that has to do with the police, our friend Chandler, who was in the studio yesterday or last week, he's on night shift this week. And last night I was coming home from playing Dungeons and Dragons with some friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I passed his unit. Now, I know him. I trust him with my life. I trust him, taking care of things. If something ever happened to me, helping take care of things. He's a brother to me. He jokingly flashed his blue lights, and my heart sank.
Sure.
And the funny thing is, I knew it was him.
Yeah.
But it's that innate, like, oh, what's wrong here? And I know what that sounds like. After being a police officer for about a year and a half, you learn how to, like, get a knock across so nobody can not hear it in the house. So,
well, let's face it, if you have any respect for authority, if you get pulled over at a routine traffic stop, you've not done anything, but the whole time you're going, man, I hope they didn't, I hope that what I stole back in the 6th grade.
Why does that happen?
Because it's the same thing as they call white coat trauma. So what that means is when you go to the doctor, I never realized this. I had to go to the doctor to have something on my neck checked out. And so I went there, and when I went into the doctor's office, my blood pressure was like really high. And the woman asked me, she's like, man, she said, the nurse taking, she's like, you got really high blood pressure. Well, I go through the whole procedure. They check the issue out with my neck. They're like, everything's fine here. This is, a simple in and out surgery will fix this. And so as they're dismissing me, they take my blood pressure again. My blood pressure's normal. And I asked the nurse, I said, why? What happened? She said, it's called white coat trauma. She said, that you're here for a reason. And she said, nerves start to happen.
Mm.
And so, certain things like that happen with some musicians too. Like they get a nervous tick about them, and it will cause them to go tone deaf if they get really nervous. And so they have to build up that confidence. Well, it's the same thing. A police officer pulls you over. I mean, he's pulling you over for a reason, right? And there's nothing in your background. You know it. You just hope they don't get the wrong person. So I think a lot of things are going on there. But what I'm saying is, so anything, soldiers, man, coming back home from combat, I mean, and it can be up to any age, they could all fall underneath this. And so to think, well, this wouldn't happen in our state. No, these kind of things are discussed amongst politicians.
Yeah, that realm of thinking doesn't stay in one spot for too long.
No, they all run in the same circles, man.
That's why we say, call your representative, because your representative, you may not think it, but Georgia's representative sitting at a table with Montana's representatives from the middle of nowhere. Right. And they're all at a table hanging out with a representative from the representative who represents Los Angeles County. And so you got to understand is that, first of all, the game was rigged from the start. Just wanted to quote one of my favorite video games, Fallout New Vegas. But you got to be able to let your voice be heard and just talk it out, and really just pick up that phone. And sometimes it could be, from my experience, as little as a 5-minute conversation of, "Hey, listen, I just want you to know that I live in your district, and I don't appreciate these things happening." And they say, and sometimes you talk to a representative of a representative at times, or an assistant. And sometimes you do get the representative. Sometimes they pick up and they say, "Hey, listen, I really appreciate you calling." Yeah. And they have to say things to be formal like that. But the thing is, humans, as we talked about, as a whole, I'm not going to say, specifically this always happens, but for the majority of the time, humans, when they hear the plight of other humans, for the most part, sit back and kind of go, okay, this is not good. And then when they hear it from a whole bunch of other humans, they go, okay, this is really not good. Yeah. I should really say something. And listen, one representative isn't going to change anything. 2 representatives isn't going to change anything. But I guarantee you, if you guys just go out there, talk to your representatives, or better yet, I encourage this a lot. I don't know about you, but get into your local politics. Really dig in and think, maybe I'll run for mayor. Everybody thinks that when you have to be a politician, you have to have all this money. Now, does that help? Sure. But if you're really running for the people, the help, the support will show up. And the thing is, this is what we want. This is what we mean by really thinking for yourself. Think outside the box. Think of what you want to do to change these things, because a bill like this could easily, and again, you said we're not conspiracy theorists over here, but let's just think out loud. What did they say the Jews had a problem with in Nazi Germany? They were sick. Yeah. They had issues. And who was coming up with those? The government was coming up with those terms. They weren't actual doctors. It was, I can't remember their names. I'm not even going to remember.
Well, and like I told you when we were talking about that, one of the things that they did is they encouraged gay people to move to specific cities in Germany.
Oh yeah,
because then they could isolate. They could concentrate where they were.
Yeah.
And then once the Nazis took over, they started arresting all the gay people. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say, and I pray to God I'm never proven right, because I pray to God that this bill never passes. But I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say, if this bill ever passed, what will happen is all of a sudden now, you're not going to be celebrated because you're transgender or because you're gay. What's going to happen is they're going to arrest you, because they are going to now say that you have a mental issue. That's what's going to happen. I mean, because there's that conversation is already being discussed, right? I mean, there's other podcasts that I think Tim Pool may have. I don't know, but I'm certain Joe Rogan. They've had discussions on their podcasts about the possibility of transgenderism being a mental disorder. Now, I'm not saying Joe Rogan doesn't believe that. I'm just saying that he's had people on his podcast that have discussed it. And Joe Rogan certainly, I would venture to say, would not agree with this bill, I would think. But I can't speak for him.
No.
But what I'm saying is that I would make the prediction. I'd be so bold as to make the prediction that would be the next thing they would do.
It's hard to speculate, but it's also we also live in a day and age where I have InfoWars, the guy from InfoWars.
Oh, it's I know who I can't think of his name right now.
Oh, shucks. But InfoWars, there's a lot of people on the internet having jokes where they show these jars where it says, oh, Alex Jones.
Yeah.
They say, I feel so dumb that I forgot Alex Jones with just so much going on just in my brain right now. But Alex Jones, which honestly, love him or hate him, I think he's a character. I think he's hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
But
fun to watch.
There's a lot of funny memes going out there because you said, I hope I'm not right.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think Alex Jones wishes he wasn't right either because there are people with jars on their shows. It's called the Alex Jones was right jar, and they have to put $1 in every time something comes true from what he said.
He's predicted a lot of stuff.
He's not a prophet, obviously, because he's gotten a lot of stuff wrong too, but he is somebody who's just reading between the lines.
Yeah.
And look at, this wasn't conspiratorial what Thomas did. He just went, because of the Freedom of Information Act, he got HB 1013 in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
You just type it in and it's there.
Yeah.
Guys, these are the things that the people who are being called conspiracy theorists are literally taking the words that the government is putting out and just showing it up in front of a camera and saying, this is what they're doing.
Right.
They're not hiding it.
No.
And then through all of the social medias that they've got, this isn't conspiracy, this is just fact. Through all of the social medias, through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of that stuff, they're able to tell you, these guys are wrong. This isn't really happening. It's not there. And then most of you, and I say this with respect, but most of you say, yeah, sure. And then they just wipe it off. But you can't do that anymore, guys. You have to be willing to read these massive bills. The reason they make these bills so stupid big is because we have been trained to click I agree with the terms of service.
Yep.
We have all seen it, if you have an Apple product, you've seen it. Back in the day with iTunes, I think you had to click it every month or something. Do you agree with our terms?
I think you still do, don't you?
Well, I haven't checked it in a while, but the thing is, it says you agree to these terms and service, and of course, especially me, when I first got my first iPod, I was like 13. I'm not going to read all through the terms of service.
Right.
I'll just agree with it. It's no big deal. Nothing crazy is happening.
You wouldn't understand some of it either.
I wouldn't understand
I
of it.
wouldn't either. I'm just saying most Americans wouldn't.
But let's be real. This is what they do with these bills. They make them massive. They make them big. I mean, some of these bills are thicker than the Bible. And I was telling Thomas, I said, that's a lot of papers. And then we both agreed, yeah, actually, compared to other bills, that are out there, this is lightweight compared to the massive bills that have come out just to keep people confused and say, I'm not going to read this. I'll just vote no because my base platform says to vote no. But then you come to realize that bill might have been important for the rest of the country.
Right. Well, you mentioned getting involved in local politics. I've got a friend back in Tennessee, and I'm certain he doesn't care that I say this. I know he's listening. And he put it on my Facebook, so I think by this point everybody knows. He's running for an election in, I believe, Grundy County, which is, if I had to guess, probably going to be Minville. 'Cause that's where he's from.
Okay, cool.
And if you're in that area and you're listening to this show, I would say go vote for the guy. I know him. He's a good guy.
Well,
honest guy.
if he's running, it's public. Do you want to just say his name?
Yeah, Brandon Wanamaker.
Okay.
I thought I did.
I don't know him.
So he's running and smart guy, and I think he'll do great. And but that's the key, is getting involved in local politics and see so many people. We've got it from every aspect. Even in the church world. With what you and I are doing, okay, we're involved in a podcast in Conway, Arkansas. Do we want to be on a larger scale? Yeah. Everybody wants to be on a larger scale. But what I also know is that we can be more influential, especially being very involved locally.
Oh, the reality that everybody has to understand is that you are not Superman.
Yeah.
And therefore, we need to pull back on the idea that we can change the world from a computer.
Yeah.
Now, if you want, for instance, I was having a conversation with somebody, and they said, we need to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. And I said, okay, go sign up for the military. And they said,
You first.
They said, well, no. I'm just saying that our military. I said, okay, but here's the thing. Do not say something that I know for a fact you don't have any information on. Don't say that you're willing to risk other people's lives if you're not willing to put your life on the line either.
Right. Well, it's like I told a guy one time, and he was one of these zealots, and he was like, man, I can't wait till Christian persecution comes to the church in the United States. I said, really? He said, yeah, absolutely. And I had just met him. He had come to the young adults that I was helping out with at the time. And I said, what's your name, man? And he tells me. I said, okay. I said, you live local here to Nashville? He said, absolutely. I said, well, I'm going to get your house address. And I said, if that happens, I'm going to send the police straight to your house and tell them that you want persecution. He goes, oh, no. I said, no. I said, you can't back up now.
Yeah.
Because I said, the bottom line is, if you're going to say you want something, you need to be able to back that up and say, I'm willing to do it.
Yeah.
Lead by example.
Yeah, the thing is that the brave men and women in our military, they signed up to defend this country. However, it's one of those. It's a weird time for our military in terms of what we've had before, where we drafted individuals, or we told people, hey, you were going to join the military, without question, or blase. We have a lot of volunteers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these volunteers are warriors in a garden.
That's
meaning,
right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right now, there is a chance to have a huge chance of peace, where our warriors can just thrive in their home and be ready to fight. Nobody signs up, of course people do, but not many people sign up to volunteer for the military because they want to go kill the bad guys.
Right.
They sign up because they want to pay for college.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have a problem with that. And therefore, if you're volunteering because you want to make sure you can pay for college, but you're also serving our country, I applaud you for that. But I'm also not going to vote that we jump into any issue, because if your first thought was to join the military to help yourself, which is not a problem, then I don't think we should be jumping into a major conflict, because at this point, if we don't have to, we shouldn't. Now, if we have to, boots
Right.
on the ground, do your
Right.
thing, handle your business. I applaud you. Thank you. But I don't want to put anybody's life at risk, even though they did sign up to be in the military. I don't want to put their lives at risk. I don't want to do that if we don't have to. And that's my biggest thing, is that when we have moments like this where people are saying, let's just, we should do this. It's like, okay, fine. Then you put your life on the line with this, especially with something like, so when you're voting in something, you should be able to say, would I be willing to handle the flack that comes from this type of thing?
Well,
that's my point.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'd say this. I mean, there's even one better than that, and that is, if you really want to go fight in Ukraine, they're taking people.
Yeah.
You don't have to. You don't even have to join the military. But the original idea of the founders was not to have a federal military. The original founders were. That's why they had the state militias and what we would call now National Guard and state guards. A person went and they would train in the military, in their state military,
Mm-hmm.
and they were there to protect their state. It's just that what would happen is we looked at it as, okay, an attack on one state is an attack on all states.
Yeah.
Because we realized, okay, we can't expect, Delaware to fight their war while Virginia's kind of sitting down here. Although that may happen, you may have an attack from natives or something, indigenous people, but then Virginia didn't send their troops up there to go fight. But if there was an attack outside of the country, such as there was in 1812,
exactly,
then all of the colonies or states would get together and say, hey, we're gonna defend this land, because that's this we will defend was part of the motto. And so, with this right here, you're right. You need to ask yourself the question first. Okay, am I willing to allow stuff like this to be imposed upon not just me? Maybe it's never imposed on me, but it's imposed on someone I care about.
Yeah.
And so, local is the best way. That is what makes America thrive, and it's not just. And again, I'm going to put the plug in there for the local church. We are a local church here in Conway, and again, I extend that invitation. If you're here in the Conway area, come on out. We would love to have you here because local is the best way to get your voice heard on a larger scale. Nationally. Because if you think about it, a president is in office for what, 72 months if they get 2 years? I think it's something like 72 months. Our founders, man, they meant for our government's job, federal government's job, to be so difficult. Another reason why bills like this can be long is because one of the positives to a long bill like this is, or a big bill like this is, that they're so busy they stay out of our hair.
Yeah,
and we can, because I mean, our politicians are there for 72 months, presidents rather, and the idea is that, hey, let the American people live their lives.
Yeah, and when you let somebody live their lives, it's funny. Have you ever played any of the real-time strategy games on the computer where you like run a country and whatnot? There's Civilization 5, there's Empire Total War, there's all the Total War games. You have to manage the resources. If you go to war, you have to deal with the war and stuff. You have to deal with culture.
The closest I came to that is I played one called Roman Empire, Roman Gladiator, or something like that.
Yeah, so Total War Rome or something. That was a big one. So something that people find when they play those games, guys, one of the biggest things that I could always tell parents is that get your kid to play a real-time strategy game. What that is that in real time, you, your allies, and your enemies are all working to getting stuff done. And in many of these games, like the Civilization games, for instance, you can win culturally, you can win scientifically, you can win by war, which, surprise, surprise, the easiest way to win is through war. Just kill off all the enemies. But
I quit because my villagers had an uprising. I wasn't able to get food, I think is what it was.
Yeah, and you have to manage those things.
Right.
So some guy was joking on Twitch, and he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make this a true libertarian. He was making fun of it. He wanted to show that, you need federal government to keep things in order, right?
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not going to have any laws against this. Laws aren't going to be that crazy, I'm going to allow, even if they want to murder, they can murder each other, all this stuff. And his country thrived.
Right.
Because he didn't have it, and he came back and he goes, "Wait a minute, what's going on? Why is this happening? Why is the computer system saying that they're all able to function by themselves and not
backed off and let them live their lives?"
Yeah, and one of the things that you'll hear good coaches say to referees in any sport, and if you've ever played a sport, you know what I'm going to say is let the kids play.
Right.
Because if you have some talented people, you are only getting in the way if you try to come up with a plan that isn't going to work for them.
Yeah.
You're not going to tell the dream team anything. You're just going to tell them, go play basketball.
Yeah.
And the only thing you should be doing when you see the dream team is, hey, listen, Michael, I noticed that you're getting tired. Why don't you take like a 30-second break, get some water, and then go back in.
Yeah.
And then, he'll probably say, no, I've got money on the line. I'm going to keep playing. But it's one of those things where you let the people be. And so, back to my point of like, you're not Superman. You can't save everything around the world. But what you can do is you can, at the local level, band together with like-minded people and say, we're going to help the homeless around here. We're going to help those who are impoverished because of bad money decision making. Yeah. For instance, I have a friend who is really good with money, and one of his biggest things is that he wants to create a brick and mortar, so like in person, you come to the local area where he lives. I'm not going to mention it, and you get help with your finances, like for free, just like, hey, how can we help you with this? Where can we go? And there are different tools that you can use, you could pay for, but he wants to offer up just the basic of how to make a budget, how to do things.
Sure.
And that goes all the way back to what I said earlier, the cultural shift of, instead of teaching people to rely on the government, which is the public school system, let me just first and foremost say that, and that's another topic for another day. Instead of teaching the young generation of just relying on somebody else bigger to come in and take care of your problems, fending for yourself doesn't sound so crazy when you just make it as simple as, listen, I just want to teach you how to fish.
Right.
I just want to teach you how to grill your own food. I just want to teach you how to, my mom told me when I first moved out, she said, listen, go put some water in a pot, put it on the stove and boil it. And I said, okay, it's boiling. She said, all right, you know how to cook. You're good.
Yeah.
If you know how to boil water, you can survive. And it's not like my mom didn't teach me how to cook or anything, but, my mom gave me the basics as soon as I moved out. And then I would call her. I'd say, okay, listen, I'm boiling the noodles. How long is too long? All these different things I've learned through those basic steps of how to teach myself those things. So just remember, the best thing that we can do is to get involved in our local politics so that bills like this don't go by the wayside, and we can get the word out to the rest of the normal American citizens that aren't going to want to read the terms of service and just click the box. We don't want them to just click the box. If you vote for this bill because you read it and you go, I agree with it, I can stand behind you and say, good for you.
Yeah.
I don't want it, but hey, good for you. That's all I wanted from you, is that you thought of it yourself.
Well, another famous drummer who passed away about a year or so ago, Neil Peart.
There's no drummer like him.
All right. I watched that guy live, and I mean, he just about took the entire show himself. But I remember he said he has, he said, I would have these young musicians coming up talking about, how do I get to your level? How do I get to this person's level? And he said, I told him, man, you need to worry about conquering the local church down the street or the local school down the street before you start worrying about trying to conquer Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
And if I will say, if God wants you on a national level, he'll put you there. But what you're most influential and what you're most effective at. And I think this is what social media has hurt, because social media has given people a false pretense that they are more famous than they are.
Yeah.
And so it's, and in some cases it works out, because like this kid with 2 Twitter followers, getting Harry's to completely pull their advertisement back. But they're going to find that's not going to bode well for them. And I'm not saying that because I want to say it. It's just not. It's the what would the word be there? Cataclysmic. I mean, it's not going to bode well. And but you're going to be more effective because the people that are in your local area know you.
Mm-hmm.
Build your trust with them. Build your rapport with them, and make a reputation of, this is an honest, trustworthy person, because it's by affecting one person at a time. I'm not, as much as I love all the the people that listen to our show. And I want you to keep coming. I want you to keep telling people about it. When it comes to a personal level, I can only personally affect people that are in the Conway, Arkansas area. That's it. But what I do want to do, when we were talking about starting this podcast, one of the reasons I started this podcast and wanted to start this podcast was because I've been involved in student ministry for 22 years now. And so I've seen how that all of these college-age students, man, they're taught certain things about America and about this country that are completely wrong. And so I want to be able to do something while, my time here on this earth. I'm not one of these Christians who are biding my time until the rapture of the church, because I believe that's displeasing to God. I'm a Christian who looks at it and goes, I've got a certain amount of time on this earth. And while I'm here, Jesus may come back in the middle of that. And if he does, great. But if not, while I'm here, I need to make the best of it that I can to bring him glory.
Yes, that is our goal as believers. And honestly, even if you weren't a believer, you shouldn't be biding your time for anybody to do anything for you, because you can't expect anyone else to do it for you. Yeah. Not one bit. If you want to get better with your health, guess what? You can't pay somebody to do it for you.
No.
If you want to get better at reading, you can't pay somebody to do it for you. You have to pick up a book and you have to read a book. Mm-hmm. And then once you finish that book, you get right to the next book. It's funny. I have a buddy who hated reading in high school. Now he reads like 2 to 3 books a week.
Wow.
And I mean, he just goes at it.
It's acquired taste.
Yeah, and he works, he goes home, he works out, and then he reads.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that is something that just pick up a book or do what Jordan Peterson says and clean your room.
Well, you know what the good thing about all this is, though, don't you? To know the difference between male and female, you don't have to be a biologist. You heard about that, didn't you? So I'm just going to change the subject just a little bit here. It's been all over Facebook. You heard about that, right? What's her name? Ketanji Brown,
No, you can't question that because it's racist.
Ketanji Brown, I think that's her. Yeah, she's the woman who's being questioned, or she's before the committee right now.
Hey, listen. Count your blessings. If the hard question is, can you define a woman, and not, hey, did you gang rape someone? Because that's my biggest issue. This is the joke with all this. Okay. You're right. That was what they accused Kavanaugh of, is gang rape. Yeah,
and so Ketanji Brown, she's going to be the first black woman, right? That's what
my
Biden
eyes are
said.
rolling.
He said he was going to nominate the first black woman. Okay, now, all right, that's fine, but then you nominate somebody who, when asked about. Because it came up a lot of it came up over this whole thing with Leah Thomas that we talked about last week. And she said, well, I'm not a biologist. I can't answer that question. Talking about the different sexes. So,
awesome.
Again, I say all that because that's where we are. That's what I'm talking about, why we have to get involved locally. Because the people on the federal level are trying to influence the people on the local level and say, well, if you don't do this, then the consequences are not going to go very well.
Listen, this is one of the weirdest times to have a brain, because to have a sentient brain, because one of the things that many people don't understand is that on a dime you can switch just whatever you want to be.
Yeah.
You could be a Democrat, you could be a Republican, you can be a chair, you can be a box cutter, you could be, and I'm not speaking metaphorically, I'm just saying you could literally make yourself believe that you're whatever you want to be, because that's just the norm. But guys, it is okay to remember the truths, and to live by them. And those truths being, if you jump off of a building, Thomas.
I was getting ready to say that, actually.
If you jump off of a building and you believe you're a bird, you're going to come crashing down.
The law of gravity the truth of gravity.
The law of gravity, because everybody wants to say, oh, what's a law? What's a law? Okay, well, let me tell you about the truth of gravity that we know. You will break bones.
Yeah.
You will hurt yourself, and you might get yourself killed.
What's sad is, I hope not, but what's sad is you expect almost any day for something like this to happen in the news. Somebody really thinks that, oh, well, I identify as a bird, and then they're going to go try and do something.
Well, you've heard of otherkin, haven't you?
Who?
Yeah, no. Like there's this thing called otherkin, and it's
okay,
where they think they're mythological creatures.
Yeah,
for the most part, it's like werewolves and stuff.
Yeah, I've not. No, actually, I've not really heard about it. I know,
but that's making its rounds on TikTok, and again, when is it going to become a point of? Because here's the thing: when your niece or your nephew are running around and they're like, "I'm Darth Vader. I'm a horse. I'm when does it stop being funny? Well, it stops being funny when their health is involved, i.e., hey, it's time to go to bed. No, Darth Vader doesn't go to bed. No, you go to bed.
Yeah.
Buddy, listen, that's pretend, and we need to tell them that's pretend. Mm-hmm. Let's see, we don't talk about Bruno. Okay, that's great and all. That's great and all, but listen, you are not in a Disney Pixar movie go to sleep.
Right.
It's time. When at one point do we tell the other adults, because that's the thing. I had a conversation with somebody and this surprised me. He said, well, I'm not really an adult. The dude's 23. And I thought, and he said this, he said whole chest, everything. He really believed, well, I'm not really an adult just because I haven't lived experiences. He's like, I'm an adult by law. And I was like, no, dude, you're an adult.
Yeah.
Your body has reached a level of maturity, and whether your brain thinks it's an adult, you're an adult, okay?
Yeah.
You are no longer under the authority of your parents. Well, you shouldn't be. But the thing is, you cannot say those things because, yes, legally, by the time you turn 18, you're an adult. I would say mentally, when you're like 15, 16, and 17, and your brain starts forming its own ideas, you're not an adult, but you have this maturity about you.
Yeah.
Now, you shouldn't be making adult decisions. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you have this maturity about you that starts to be created.
Right.
And then it is solidified at a certain age in your early 20s or so.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when does that stop being funny? Because I told him as soon as he said, well, I'm not really an adult, I had to have a very heart-to-heart, hard conversation of, you need to stop saying that.
Well, I'm going to say something, and I've been very hesitant to bring this up, but because I want everybody to understand, I do not think that everybody with a mental illness is making it up, and I don't believe they're demon possessed. Okay, but many in the church, the church does teach, the Bible teaches about demonic possession. Now, what I do think is a lot of what's going on, it's demonically influenced. Because when you read that story in Mark about Jesus and Legion, the key thing there, or not the key, but one of the major factors there is when he asks him, "What is your name?" And the man starts to speak, and he says, "I am," and then it switches to Legion, for we are many. So what you see there is you see where the guy is. He's trying to speak. He's trying to say his name, but then it switches. And so what you're kind of getting there, and again, this is what I want to be careful of, because when I say this, I'm not saying that a person who's bipolar is possessed, but you're seeing a bipolar action there, right?
Yeah, I would almost argue schizophrenia type behavior.
Well, yeah, okay, schizophrenia, yeah.
And so but I get what you're saying. You're not trying to say that
I'm not saying they're possessed. I'm just saying that it's that a lot of this stuff that people are dealing with is demonically driven, okay? And I'm very careful about dealing with any of this kind of stuff or talking about it, especially on this podcast, because it's not where we've ever intended for it to go. But the church, what the church has done, the church we have dropped the definitions and controlling the definitions. And so what's happened is now psychiatry, and I'm not against psychiatrists, but psychiatry has been able to take that up, and it's become a secular view of it. Not a Christian, not a biblical one.
Yeah.
And so what's happened is the church is not able, and in many cases unwilling, to go, okay, this is something that has to be dealt with, and I'm going to deal with it. And so I'm not, we will pray this out, and we will pray over this, and so I'm not saying don't go and get professional help, but the key thing is what we've been saying all along is, as our country has abandoned faith and the church has not really been the moral compass, what we're beginning to witness is that a lot of this stuff is starting to surface. And you can go, man, you can study the history of our country and different missionaries have dealt with. And you can quickly see that a lot of it is a spiritually rooted issue.
Yeah.
And that has to be addressed. If we ever address that, these bills like this would never come up. Not because that means that nobody would have nobody would ever again have a mental illness. That's not what I'm saying. But once a lot of the mental illness that people are dealing with is because they have certain rooted sin that they choose to not deal with. That's the bottom line. They just choose not to deal with it.
There's that, and then because of that, they don't want to talk about it. So then when they do go, see, there's professionals out there that will really sit down and talk. I was blessed to find a professional counselor to help me through some of the things I've gone through in my life. In the end, they didn't tell me that it was okay.
Yeah.
They told me that I was going to be okay.
Right.
But the key word was going. I was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that it is normal to go through traumatic experiences and to work through them.
Right.
How you do it is one thing. But then, I hear other professionals that my friends and family members have gone to, and you'll hear them say, yeah, well, I go to them and I tell them this, I have these deep-rooted things, and they prescribed me this drug. Mm-hmm. And then people get hooked on the drugs. And if you've ever seen anybody on any type of drug, synthetic or otherwise, boy, oh boy, that's pretty, maybe you're not going to call it demon-possessed, but they're possessed by something, and it's that drug, and it gets to them. It's the mixture of the depression and the drug, and it brings them down. Somebody was telling me, yeah, I take this drug, and it causes, I'll use the scientific term, erectile dysfunction. And I'm just like, what? Why would you take it? Well, if it's messing with you so bad, why would you take that? Now, of course, again, that's up to them, and it's just like somebody telling me to get the vaccine. So I'm not gonna, I'm not belittling them, but I think to myself, I would never take something that's potentially going to take away anything that my body should naturally function with.
Yeah.
Now, again, I just want to put it out there that none of us here at the Exchange Podcast are calling any of you who have a mental disorder demon possessed.
No.
If you have a mental disorder, our encouragement is to seek help, find a professional counselor that's going to help you realize that this too shall pass.
Well, I would go a step further on this, and I would say, yes, go get professional help. But if you're dealing with a mental disorder, then by all means get into a local body of believers, one that teaches the scriptures, and one that has pastors and leadership and people that pray. The reason I say that is because I want you to notice here in that story that I'm talking about. Now, Jesus has already seen this guy, and the Bible says that he exorcises the demons out of the man. And in verse 14, it says, those tending the pigs ran off and reported in the town and countryside. Now, the reason, give you a backstory, if you haven't heard the story. What's going on here is Jesus the demons beg him to let us go into the pigs. Now, pigs to the Jewish people was they couldn't eat it. It was one of the worst things as far as what they weren't really supposed to have anything to do with pigs. Well, if you go to that part of the country, there was at this time, the Greeks had already come through there, and there was a temple to Zeus, and Zeus's sacrifice was pigs. So what Jesus does here is when he does that, because the Jews aren't supposed to be having anything to do with swine, he casts them into the pigs, and the pigs go and drown themselves. Not only does the demons leave this man, but now he's affected their economy, because they're involved in an economy that they shouldn't be involved in, and so these pigs die. So going on, it says, and it says, when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there dressed and in his right mind. They were afraid. They weren't afraid the whole time he's acting up weird like this. They're only afraid when he's in his right mind.
Yeah, because they don't want you to be in your right mind.
They don't want you to be in your right mind. So what I'm saying is, if you are truthfully dealing, I would say go get some professional help. If you're really dealing with this stuff, go get some professional help. Seek someone out.
But yeah, it is good to get that community, though.
Get the community, man, because I'm telling you, nothing's going to fix a problem like Christ.
Yeah,
nothing.
No, nothing is. And that community in the church, I know a lot of people. We're kind of getting into the end of the show and everything, but I just want to point out, a lot of people have come to me and told me, I've just been, I have distrust with the church. The community I've been around has been hurtful. We'll take the same concept of you can't save the world from your computer, just the same as you're not going to find a body of believers in a massive church. Nothing against, actually, no, I do have some things against massive churches that claim to be for the kingdom, but you can't just go to a church of 1,000 people and expect you're going to find your core group of friends in that church, because you will get lost in it, and you will be disgruntled by how people aren't paying attention to you. Well, they're not paying attention to you because you're so small. most of the time, and you don't have anything to offer them.
Yeah.
And that's how they think. When you get into a really big community, they have to think of how can people support us.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in a small community, it's really easy to realize where you fit in. For instance, again, and we will always plug our local church here in Conway, but there are other churches around us that are small and local and trying to help the communities. Listen, Living Water Church Conway is right here in Conway. We want to be there for any and everybody here. In fact, we do door hangers. We'll be doing them twice a year. One of the door hanger events is coming up soon, and we just go around our local neighborhood, put up door hangers, and we have 2 people who walk over occasionally to church and talk to us. And I remember one of them saying, "Listen, you guys are showing that you want to be in the community." And you want to be around the community, and that's going to speak volumes in the future. And that is something we need to do. So just remember that when you find that community, you're probably not going to find it amongst 1,000 people. But I guarantee you, if you go to a church with 100 people or less, or 200 people or less, you're gonna be in a place where you can talk to people, get to know your pastor better. Because guess what? One human being as the leader of a church can't be interpersonal with 1,000 people. I guarantee you. Yeah. So just my prayer is that you do find a local church wherever you're at. I do hope that if you are going to seek help for your mental health, please do that. And also those in Georgia, HB 1013, read it, understand it, and talk to your representative.
Yep, that's right. And as you said, we went a little bit longer, but that's all right. We're not really a time-constrained podcast anyway. But
not yet.
I would just say that, again, if you live in the Georgia area and you're listening to this, call your representative, tell them to vote no. And no matter what state you're living in, look into this thing. And if this thing's being shot across the bow, tell them no. Key thing. Get involved locally and get involved in a local church, especially. And God will show Himself faithful. He always does, and there's never a question about that. And faith in Christ is the most important thing you can do.
It is. Well, I think today was actually a really great exchange. I had a wonderful time talking about these concepts. I want to thank all of our listeners, our supporters who listen and financially support us in the podcast. If you'd like to support us, you can go to www.livingwaterconwaychurch.com/give. And we are on Facebook and on YouTube, thankfully. We're doing great. We got 10 subscribers on YouTube. So, guys, head over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and share it. And if you're having any difficulties, I know we had somebody saying that they couldn't see it on there.
Well, we've had a few people that they're not getting the updates. So I think you got to hit a bell too. So.
Send us a message on Facebook. Yeah. That is the best way to contact us there. But like I said, like, share, subscribe on YouTube. Give us a like on Facebook. Tell your aunt, tell your mother, tell everybody out there. We're going to be just growing as much as we can. Lord willing, we will be everywhere in the country in every single podcast app. I mean, we're just going, it's gangbusters. I'm excited. I'm happy to be doing this with my friend Thomas. We are praying for you guys, and God bless. Have a good weekend.